I did quite a few hikes over the past few weeks and months. Especially worth mentioning is the hike up Mount Rinjani recently here in Indonesia, which was super hard. We hiked about 63 kilometers in 4 days, most of it either up or down. So a super tough hike, and of course, if I put in all the effort, I want to get the best shots, which requires quite a bit of camera gear. So in this video, I want to share with you all the gear that I've used, and I will also give you some alternatives in case some of the gear is a bit too expensive or too heavy for you. So let's get straight into it by starting with the camera bag that I've used, or the hiking camera bag, which is the PG One Pro Flex. Little disclaimer here, PG sent me this bag for free to shoot some sponsored videos before it. One of them is a review where I talk more in depth about this bag, but I don't have any obligations to talk about this bag in this video. So this here is unsponsored, but I want to be transparent here. Now, I must say I really love this bag, mainly because it's so comfortable. It is the most comfortable camera bag that I ever carried, and this is mainly because of that arch frame here on the back, which is aluminum based, so it keeps the back straight and also a bit away from your back, which gives it a little bit of airflow. You can adjust the size of it as well, which is important, and the hip strap here supports it really nicely, so you don't feel much weight on your shoulders anymore, and that definitely rescued me during the hike in Mount Rinjani. Like, I carried that bag on my back for 4 days there. Aside from that, what I also really enjoy is that you have this top compartment here, which extends by 10 liters. So this is what it looks like if you extend it, and that's great because you have the camera insert back here at the bottom, so there's all your camera gear, and on top you can put all your clothes, maybe a drone and whatever you want to carry. There are also lots of other compartments here to put all the small stuff in. And what's good about camera inserts is that you have this quick access here from the side. So you open that, you can already see I have a camera in there, which I will come to in a moment. And also you have those battery compartments in here where you have indicators if the battery is charged or not, which I like a lot that that's integrated like that into the back. And what's also nice about the camera inserts is that you can take them out. They are delivered with a strap for the inserts. So if you're in an airport, for example, and your bag, which is carry-on size by the way, should weight too much for the airline, you can simply take out your camera bag, put the straps on it, and just check the normal bag with all your clothes, etc. in, while having all your valuables in the camera bag. That's a big feature for me because I travel a lot and I occasionally have the problem that they weight my bag and then I don't know what to do. So this solves this problem. Otherwise I wouldn't have even tested this bag, because that's just something that I need to have solved with every camera bag I have. So this offers a great solution for it. And aside from that, you also get all sorts of attachments outside. Like, you can put a tripod here on the left, put a tripod on the right. You also have a little extender here at the bottom. So you could also put the tripod here completely on the front part of your bag. And you also have multiple attachments for camera holders, like the Peak Design Capture clip or the equivalents from PG or Ulanzi. Like here, for example, I have my Peak Design one attached, but you can also put that here on the shoulder straps, for example. So super nice bag. For me, the main selling point of this bag is clearly that it lifts a lot of the weight from your shoulders. I think I would have had huge back pain during that 4-day hike. So if you go on longer hikes, that's definitely a bag that you would want to look into. But check out my full review of this bag. There you will learn more. There we go a bit more in depth about it. But now it's time to have a look inside of the bag, starting with the cameras, lenses and filters that I've used. So at first, my main camera, and the camera that I would strongly recommend for hiking, is the A7C Mark II from Sony. Full frame camera, and as you can see here, if you take the lens aside, it's actually a really small body. It's also quite lightweight, so that makes it obviously good for travel and hiking. But what I also love about this camera is that it has 33 megapixels, which is quite a good amount. So you can easily use that for all your landscape shots where you want to have a lot of detail in there. And if the 33 megapixels shouldn't be enough for you, you can also switch to the A7CR, which is a bit more expensive, but has the exact same size, and it's also quite lightweight. And there you get 61 megapixels. Therefore a bit more rolling shutter, which if you shoot a lot of video could be an issue or not. Depends on your shots, of course. That's also why I got the A7C Mark II instead of the A7CR. I value video specs a bit more over the megapixels. I find the A7C Mark II a bit better for video as well. It's also great here talking about video is that you get S-Log 3 in 10-bit 4:2. You can shoot 4K 60 with a crop, which is good if you want to have a bit of slow motion shots, and the footage still comes out pretty good despite the crops, so I don't really mind that. And where this camera certainly shines is the low light performance. Like, I got some night shots there at ISO 12800, and you could even publish that without noise reduction. It looks really good, and if you add noise reduction, there's pretty much no noise in there anymore, and you still have a lot of detail left. So especially if you want to shoot a little bit before sunrise and stuff where it might look quite nice, that's definitely also something to consider. I also brought a second camera body, which I would not say is precisely great for hiking, but I still want to mention that here, which is the A9 Mark III. I'm also shooting on that right now. The main reason why I bring two bodies is that, for example, when I shoot a time lapse with the A7C Mark II, I still want to have a second camera body for shooting videos at the same time. And it also helps occasionally because if I want to use different lenses quickly, I wouldn't have to change lenses all the time. Instead, I just grab another camera body with a different lens attached. Now, I mentioned already that the A9 Mark III is not precisely a great hiking camera, but I would also not say that it doesn't make any sense to bring a bit bigger camera body like that on your trips, because at first Sony does a great job overall keeping their bigger camera bodies small and light. And when it comes to custom buttons and dials, it can actually make sense to have a bit bigger camera body with you, because for example, I prefer having a joystick to adjust the focus point quickly, because when I'm here on the A7C Mark II, for example, and I would have to adjust my focus, I would either have to get loose of the right hand here from the grip to touch the screen, or of my other hand, and that always distracts me a little bit from shooting, while on the A9 Mark III, for example, I already have the thumb on the joystick, so I can quickly adjust my focus point and therefore adjust the focus. And that's like just one example, but generally having more custom buttons available makes it quicker for me to make adjustments. So it can definitely make sense to bring a bigger body with you if you're really into photography and videography and want to make quick adjustments. But now the reason why I brought the A9 Mark III is simply that I have it. I only have two full frame camera bodies, so that's what I brought. I think an A1 from Sony might actually be a bit better if you need a lot of megapixels for your landscape shots. Also, the Canon R5 Mark II looks pretty good. I shot the R5 before. I was always really impressed by the detail that I got from those cameras. Of course, Sony A7R series also makes sense if it's about megapixels, but if it's not about megapixels, if you're more about custom buttons, then the A7 IV, for example, is also a great camera that you can bring. And if you want to get really small, then you could also totally choose APS-C cameras. There are lots of good ones out there. Fujifilm X-S20, for example, is a good camera. Also, the Fujifilm X-T5 and Sony a6700 are great cameras if you want to go with APS-C. And if you don't shoot any photos or so, if the megapixels overall are not that important for you, then the A7S III and FX3 can also be great choices for that. Next up are lenses, which are probably the most important tools when it comes to capturing good hiking shots, because you don't have any control about other things like lighting. But before we get into that, there is another tool that you definitely need to create awesome hiking videos, which is music that tells your story well, doesn't get you copyright strikes on social media, and of course doesn't break the bank. And guess what? You get all of that with audio. I use audio for my hiking videos from Indonesia, as a selection of cinematic music is perfect for telling stories in these videos. They partner with real artists and composers to offer a curated catalog of high quality music, so you're not stuck with generic stock tracks. Audio's Pro license lets you use music on any platform, whether it's YouTube or any other social media platform, with no extra licensing headaches, which is a must. A really cool feature of audio is their link match AI. You just paste a link to any song from Spotify, YouTube or TikTok, and Audio's AI finds a perfect match. It saves me a ton of time and makes it easy to get the right vibe. I've actually been surprised how good it works. They also have Elements, which lets you access individual stems for each track. So if you want to remix or adjust a song to fit your video, you've got all the tools you need. Audio also got over 300,000 premium sound effects, which are even used in major films. And with an improved search engine, finding the right sound is quick and easy. On top of that, Audio is the only platform that offers a lifetime deal with a one-time payment. And right now you can get up to 70% off using my code at checkout, or simply use the link in the description of this video. So if you're still looking for music for your hiking and travel videos, check out Audio. I will leave a link in the description below. But let's come to lenses now. Let's start with the one that I use the most, which is the Sony 16-35mm f2.8 G Master Mark II, the new one. What I love about this lens, 16-35 allows me to capture everything around me quickly, especially at 16mm. It's great for vlogging, but also wide angle shots. And 35mm is great for B-roll. You can even get a bit closer by either using the APS-C crop in your camera or clear image zoom, which I have mapped to a custom button on my A7C Mark II and also on the A9 Mark III. It's pretty versatile, like you can capture pretty much everything with it. And why I shoot the G Master Mark II is that at first it's super light, like 550 gram for a zoom lens that wide, and at f2.8 you just don't find that often. It's pretty light for such a lens. And of course the image quality of this lens is really good as well. It's pretty sharp, you have a nice smooth bokeh, and because it's a native Sony lens, it also gives you exclusive features such as focus breathing corrections. And because I shoot a lot of video, this is actually important to me. Like when I zoom in and out, I don't want to have focus breathing in there. It's one of the main reasons why I went for native Sony lenses. It's a bit more expensive, yes, but I think it's worth it. However, you can totally get away with cheaper lenses. There are many options actually in that focal range. So at first you have the 16-35mm f4. There are multiple lenses from Sony available. And you also have the new 16-25mm f2.8 lenses if you don't necessarily need 35mm. They're a lot smaller and also a bit less expensive. And you also have third-party lenses available from Tamron, for example, the infamous 17-28 f2.8, and an equivalent from Sigma, the 16-28 as well, also f2.8. Both of them are a bit lighter and they also cost a lot less. And of course, if you go with APS-C cameras, you also have various options. You're generally looking for lenses that are 10-20mm or 11-18. There are multiple lenses available, and you can also go the prime lens way. For example, on full frame cameras you can get the Sony 20mm f1.8, the Viltrox 20mm f2.8, I think it was. Yeah, I reviewed this lens a few months ago. It's also quite nice and very, very light and small. And for APS-C you have, for example, the Viltrox 13mm f1.4. I think there was also from Sony 11mm something. These are great options overall if you don't have to zoom, because, well, that's the downside of prime lenses. You can't zoom, but therefore those lenses are very small, very light, and especially if you get prime lenses for APS-C cameras, that's especially good for hiking. So many options there. There's really no shortage of that. But let's come to the next lens, which is the lens that I'm shooting on right now, the 35mm f1.4 from Sony. This lens comes at a similar weight with 524 gram, but the reason why I have it, despite already having the 35mm focal length covered with this lens, the 16-35, is simply the f1.4 aperture. I just like that blur. The image that's coming out of this lens is just beautiful. F1.4 aperture is especially good to get low light shots, like for example during the hike on Mount Rinjani in the night. I use this lens all the time because I noticed during my research about Rinjani hiking videos that not many people show the actual hike in the dark, which is probably because it's really hard to cover. So I just use the f1.4 lens plus 12,800 ISO on the A7C Mark II here, and I got pretty cool shots, as you can see. And the reason why I chose 35mm and not 50, 24 or something like that is simply that I find 35mm super versatile, because it's not super close like a 50mm already. It's still a bit wider, but it's also not super wide. So I can use this lens a lot for B-roll, but I can also quickly give it to a friend to get some quick shots of myself. It's not too far away from myself. So that makes this lens really versatile. And to give you some alternatives to this lens, you can, for example, get a 35mm f1.8. I think there are plenty out there. Already mentioned the 20mm 1.8 if you want to go wide. And Viltrox also has the 40mm f2.5, which is a really small and light lens, but it doesn't give you as much blur as in 1.4 or 1.8 lens. So if it's not that much about blur, if you more go for a prime lens for your wide angle shots and you want to have something closer, which is also light, then the Viltrox can be a good option. I recently reviewed this lens. And if you want to get the APS-C route, definitely look into 23mm lenses at lower apertures such as f1.4. But an especially good lens, if weight and size is not your main concern, is the Viltrox 27mm f1.2 lens, which I've mentioned in many videos. It's just my favorite APS-C lens overall. So much about all the normal focal length lenses. Let's now come to that beast here, 70-200 f2.8 G Master Mark II from Sony. Now you can definitely see this is not a small lightweight lens, but considering what it is, like a 70-200 f2.8, it actually is quite light at 1050 gram around. It's actually the lightest f2.8 70-200 lens out there as far as I know. And that's why I brought this lens. Like the 70-200 focal length at f2.8 just gives you such beautiful shots, as you can see here. Despite the weight, I just want to have this lens with me. It's also great, especially when I'm in the mountains and I have shots that are just a bit farther away, just being able to quickly zoom into 200, maybe even activating APS-C crop in your camera to get to 300mm quickly. It just makes it possible to get shots that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. That makes it so strong. And then overall, it brings the background a bit closer. You have this nice lens compression, so you can also overall get shots that just look nicer as with wider lenses such as the 35mm or 16-35 or so. So for those reasons, I think that you should have a tele lens with you when you go out there, but of course it mustn't be this one. It's again quite big, heavy and expensive. There are alternatives. You can, for example, get a 70-200 f4. There's also the G Master Mark II f4 available, which is quite a bit cheaper and lighter than this one. And you also have the Tamron 70-180 f2.8 available. There you also have a 2.8 aperture, 20mm on the long end, don't make much of a difference, but this lens is also a lot lighter and also less expensive, so that's something to look into. There are also various other lenses like your 70-300 for example, or you could choose an APS-C lens so that your camera switches to APS-C crop and you have a bit longer range, but those lenses are usually not f2.8, or if they are 2.8 they might be quite a bit bigger and even more expensive, so that's not suitable. But I think it's totally valid to choose lenses that are not f2.8 at those focal lengths, because even at f5.6 or so, you still get quite a bit of background blur. I'm just a perfectionist in that case. I just love those shots where you have ultra sharp in focus areas together with creamy bokehs in the background, and that's why I chose the 70-200 f2.8 here. But it's really up to you. I just think you should have a tele lens with you. So we got cameras and lenses covered, but you also have to mount them somewhere on a tripod. And there is a really nice tool which I use all the time, and I'm using it right now here, which is the Ulanzi hiking tripod, which combines hiking sticks and a tripod together. If you go on a lot of hikes, you know hiking sticks, they help a lot. They get a bit of the weight away from your legs, and I'm very sure that I would not have been able to do the Mount Rinjani hike without hiking sticks, simply because this hike is so hard and I was definitely not trained well enough for it. And now the thing is, usually you would have to bring hiking sticks and a tripod, but Ulanzi solves this issue by combining both. So essentially you have 3 hiking sticks which also act as the legs of your tripod, and you have a kind of mini tripod which you can totally use separately to get some quick shots of yourself. But at the moment you need to have a bigger tripod, you can simply attach those 3 legs or hiking sticks to the small tripod, and then you have a proper tripod with a normal body size height. I think the maximum height is somewhere around 1.55 m or something like that, so like most travel tripods are. I think that makes it such a great tool for hiking if you're into photography or videography, because it saves you so much weight. Like, you don't have to carry a tripod anymore with you, only one leg and it's a little tripod, which is actually pretty light because it's made out of carbon fiber. And for that reason, that's simply a tool that I don't want to miss anymore. Even on shorter hikes, I bring this tripod all the time since I have it. A little disclaimer here as well, Ulanzi sent me this tripod for free, but honestly, if they wouldn't, I would have bought it, and now that I used it, I would also buy it again if I lose it or so, just because it's such an awesome tool. There's one little downside to this tripod, which is that you can't extend the top part of it. Every time you want to make some height adjustments, you would have to do that via the legs, and I found that sometimes slows me a little bit down, but considering the advantage of weight savings that I have with this tripod, that's definitely something I'm willing to live with. Just if Ulanzi brings out a second iteration of this tripod, it would be great if they could integrate a feature where we can extend it a little bit on the top for quick adjustments. One thing you might worry about this hiking stick tripod might be the sturdiness. That's at least something that I was a bit worried about before, because, well, obviously you put quite a bit of weight on it when you use them as hiking sticks, but I can assure you it's perfectly fine. I mean, I've been hiking probably around 80 kilometers with that. First, again, Rinjani hike, I used it all the time, and also some more hikes in north of Thailand before, and also around Bromo in Indonesia, where we've been a few days ago. I did not have any issues with it. Of course, it occasionally happened that one leg or hiking stick might get pushed in when I leaned on it with a full body weight, but that was then because I did not fully adjust or fully tightened one of those legs, because they are adjustable. So after that happened, I just made it a bit tighter and it didn't happen anymore. So it's really, you have to adjust it a bit to your body weight, and of course it also depends a bit how much you lean on it. But from this experience, I can assure you that those legs hold up. Like, I've pushed them a lot and nothing broke or so. They still work perfectly fine. So these are very strong hiking sticks and tripod legs all together. And it's also good that you can adjust the tightness of it, because those tripod legs, they always wear a bit over time. For example, also the Peak Design travel tripod does that. And that's why it's important to have this ability to make adjustments to the tightness of the locks on the legs, so that over time you can compensate for the wear. So if you're looking for a good tripod to carry around in your hikes, then definitely check that out. It just takes so much weight off your shoulders, and it's actually a really good tripod. And it's come to a super infamous part of camera gear for your hikes, which is the drone. I personally use the DJI Air 3 here, mainly because it has two cameras, a 24mm or 1x camera and the 3x camera. I think it's like 70mm around. I love the second camera, 70mm, because it gives you another perspective. It's not just about being closer to a subject at 70mm, it's also about having things like parallax effect available in general background compression, quite similar to the 70-200 lens here on my main camera. And that just gives you shots that you can't get otherwise with any other drone, because they don't have the zoom, or it's just digital, so it would look bad. So that's why I strongly recommend the DJI Air 3. Of course, the DJI Air 3S recently came out, so if you don't have a drone yet and you're looking into something that has two cameras or two lenses available, then you might want to look into the Air 3S, because the quality there is slightly better and it also has better sensors. However, I think upgrading from the Air 3 is not really worth it. Of course, this drone is not precisely lightweight at over 700 grams, so if the second lens is not that important for you, if you want to save a bit of weight, then you might want to look into the DJI Mini 4. The video quality of the Mini 4 is very similar to the Air 3, but it doesn't have the second camera, but therefore it's only around 250 grams depending on the batteries that you use with it. So you save quite a lot of weight in your bag, and there have been parts of my hikes where I actually wish that I had a Mini 4, but well, I want this second lens, it's just so important for me. Another advantage of getting a drone like that is that you also have the battery holder in the Fly More combo included, which acts as a power bank if you don't fly your drone that often. That can also be an advantage, especially on longer hikes if you need some additional battery power. So that's all or most of the gear that I had with me, at least the camera gear. Of course, I was a bit more for hiking, clothes and stuff, but I think we don't have to get into that. First, power bank. I have a 10,000 milliampere Orki power bank here. This is the Omnia 2, 30 watts. I chose 30 watts and USB-C, which is important for me because I want to be sure that it can charge all of my devices, and I think some of them might actually need a bit higher wattage than others, so I wanted to be sure that it has 30 watts and USB-C. Must say I charged 2 Sony batteries with it and it was nearly empty. So those 10,000 milliamperes, that don't hold up that long. Maybe if you really go hiking for multiple days and you might need to charge a lot, then better bring maybe 15,000 to 20,000 milliamperes. But well, I had it on the 4-day hike and it was enough. One reason might have been that I didn't need to charge my phone. I kept it in airplane mode all the time. I also didn't fly the drone too much, so I didn't have to charge that, and also my Apple Watch luckily lasted for 4 days, so I didn't have to charge that much. Next type of gear, let's talk about filters. Now, I had different kinds of filters with me. Here I have the Hyder MC CPL VND Pro 2 with me, which is a great filter for hiking. No problems at all. I really like that it has this little knob here for quickly adjusting the ND, and I can also adjust the CPL. I also had the new Peter McKinnon filter with me. I must say, like, there is a problem with this filter, which I talk about in my VND filter comparison. I will just link that in the description below and also here in the corner. There you can learn a bit more about all the different filters. What I mainly want to say here is I had the Nisi filter Swift system with me, which for like normal shooting I usually like and it's great value, but for hiking I don't like it at all because this filter here falls down all the time from the lens. I use it right now to shoot the video, so I can't show you that. The thing with this filter is that because it's not magnetic or so, it doesn't stick that tight to the main filter. So if you have the camera hanging down while you're walking, it just falls down all the time. So in those cases, the Hyder filter or the Peter McKinnon ones are definitely better. Freewell also has great filters for that. So just check out my overall VND filter comparison as mentioned, and there you will learn more about filters. And then quickly about batteries here. I bought 5 batteries total, so 1 or 2 batteries in the camera and 3 additional ones. I do also use third-party batteries. Which one is it? It's one from Kingma here, and I never had any issues with those batteries so far. But when you get third-party batteries for your cameras, you should always read some reviews before, because there is a risk involved that might damage your camera. It doesn't happen often as far as I know, but it can happen. So make sure that you buy some quality third-party batteries or original ones. And as mentioned before, I had to charge the batteries 2 times. So for 4 days, even 5 batteries wasn't enough. I must say though, the A9 Mark III seems to swallow quite a bit of battery. I think it's a global shutter sensor, so that always gets a bit lower quick compared to the A7C Mark II, for example. And microphones. I had the ECM B1M microphone for Sony cameras with me, which I love because there's no cable involved, so I don't need to worry about that something's not connected well and the audio doesn't record. And honestly, it's pretty sturdy. Like, we were walking around all the time, like even when I had it attached to my body, the camera, I had this microphone attached all the time. It knocked some bushes somewhere and some branches and stuff, and nothing happened to this microphone. It worked all the time. So that's definitely pretty sturdy. ECM B1M from Sony. If you use Sony cameras, definitely get that. And wireless microphone, I use the DJI Mic 2, which you also hear right now. I have that attached to my body. And I have the single combo here, not the one with 2 transmitters, because it's a bit cheaper. I already have 1 transmitter on my DJI Pocket 3, which I did not bring. So yeah, the single combo is enough for me, and it also saves you a bit of weight while traveling. But those microphones, I think they only last about 4 or 5 hours. So if you talk a lot, you might be prepared that you have to charge both the transmitter and the receiver, but especially the transmitter, that swallows a bit more energy. So be aware of that with those microphones. However, what I love about those microphones is the audio quality. It's beautiful. Here you might hear a bit of room tone. I'm in a hotel room right now, but generally, especially when you're outside, the audio quality of those microphones is great. And another tool that you absolutely need when you go hiking is a capture clip from Peak Design, but it doesn't really matter if you choose Peak Design or the equivalents from PGY Tech or Ulanzi, because what they do is essentially like you can just attach your camera either to your strap, your camera strap, or your belt. If you want to attach it to your belt, this Peak Design belt attachment here comes in handy, because then you like attach it to the, like you attach that part to the belt, and then you can attach the capture clip here, so you have a camera hanging around from your belt. I find that so good for hiking, because like a camera strap is a bit annoying over time, as the camera always moves around and stuff, and it also wears a bit on your back. Don't like that. A little tip, it is better on long hikes if you attach it to your belt instead of your back strap, your shoulder strap, because the shoulder strap, I figured out, especially on the first day of the Rinjani hike, is that it pulls down and that causes some pain in the shoulder. Like after I attached it to the belt, it also made some adjustments to the back. The weight was pretty much lifted from my shoulders and I did not get any back pain anymore. And let's come to the next one here, which is storage media. I mostly use those Sony Tough V90 cards here. Can of course also get lower cards like V60, V30 or so. It's perfectly fine, unless you want to record in 120 frames per second, which most likely is the case. And I love those cards because they are very sturdy and didn't cause me any problems so far. What I also used was the CFast Express Type A card from Pergear in my Sony A9 Mark III. So if you have a camera that supports CFast Express Type A on Sony cameras, or Type B on Canon or Fuji or so, then look into those Pergear cards, because so far my experience with those cards is great and they save you a lot of money. They're actually very affordable, so check out them. I will also leave a link in the description below. Now, there is a reason why I wanted to bring very durable cards, because on the Rinjani hike, at least during 4 days, I wanted to save as much weight as possible. So I did not bring anything to transfer files from my cards to an SSD or so, and that's why I just brought more SD cards from like Sony Tough cards and the CFast Express, so that I could just keep recording all the time and didn't have to transfer anything. I just had enough space with me. This is not the best way to go, because your SD card might fail. Even the Sony Tough or so can fail if you don't have luck. It's unlikely, but it can happen, and then you would essentially lose all your files. So it was really only because that hike was so long, over 4 days. But if I would do a 1 day or 2 day hike, then I would most likely bring some other tools, and that's mainly here the iPad 11-inch M4 that I have. It's very light, and of course it gets a bit more heavy if you bring it with a keyboard, but if I would go on a hike with that iPad, I would actually just not bring the keyboard and just bring a normal case instead. The case that I use here is from Harbour London, a nice leather case, protects it quite well and also looks great. So with that you save a lot of weight, just put the iPad inside and then you can bring it on your hikes. And what I like about the iPad for hiking is that you could use that to quickly transfer files from your cameras directly to the iPad. That avoids the risk that you might lose your footage if you don't have luck. And of course, if you're up there in the mountains, you have some time to chill or so on your board, then maybe you can also use it to read some books or so. The reason why I use the iPad Pro 11-inch is not actually hiking related. This is more throughout the day. I use it to monitor my camera. I use it for color grading when I color grade HDR, for example, because I want to have a good display there. And also when I just want to have a chilled day on the sofa and I want to write some video scripts or so. And this is a great iPad as well. Of course, YouTube, Netflix, etc. It's also a great media consumption device. So don't necessarily need this iPad for hiking. Get an iPad mini or so if you want something smaller, just to transfer files, and it's totally fine for that. And of course, when you have an iPad or a MacBook or so, you might not necessarily want to use the external SSD so much for your videos, because it gets quite expensive to add up when you purchase it. That's why you might want to use an external SSD. Now, throughout the years, I used SSDs from SanDisk most of the time. They're quite small and I found them quite durable as well. They had little issues I saw recently, but it seems like they are fixed, so they are fine. Also, Samsung offers good drives with the T5 and T7s. I used them before as well too, but not that much. But what I recently did now is I switched to an NVMe enclosure. So this is an enclosure where you put an SSD chip, an NVMe M2 chip, inside. This is from Ugreen and it features USB 4 and I think also Thunderbolt 4, so it's super fast. And the NVMe chip I put inside is from WD Black, which are very fast drives. I got a 2 TB version. It's definitely not necessary to have those high speed, even those 550 Mbit drives. They do a great job for video editing and quickly transferring your files, but I just want to have it as fast as possible, and that's why I got that. So you just attach it to your iPad, for example, and then you can quickly copy all the files on there. What I noticed though, after I did the hike and I tried to copy all the files, is that it would have been nice to have a USB-C hub, because I always had to copy the files from the camera first to the internal storage of the iPad and then to the SSD, which takes a bit longer. So if you get an external SSD for your iPad, you might as well want to get a USB-C hub. Oh yeah, and I forgot one thing about the iPad. A reason why you might want to bring an iPad with you is that you can also use the iPad as a power bank. So let's be honest, transferring files, especially if you have a USB-C hub or if you store the files on the internal SSD of your iPad, goes quite fast. You might only need the iPad total for maybe within 4 days for maybe an hour or so. So you can actually empty the rest of the battery to charge other batteries or so. Oh yeah, and I forgot one thing, action camera. I brought the DJI Action 5 Pro. I think that's the best action camera so far because the video quality is, in my opinion, the best. They also just released a firmware upgrade where they fixed the bitrate issue. Like, you can have a high bitrate now with this camera, even in 4K up to 30 frames per second. It's good that they added that so quick. And where I use this action cam on a Rinjani hike, for example, was mostly during heavy rain. I didn't want to use my normal cameras. And also action shots whenever something is happening quick or so, where it might be a bit risky to use your other camera. So that's all the gear I used for my hiking videos. If you want to learn a bit more about the filters, then again, check out this video here in the corner. Aside from that, definitely check out my upcoming videos about the Rinjani hike, Mount Bromo, and also about the camera back here from PGY Tech. For that, just subscribe. Those videos will come up over the next 2 weeks. So I'm out and I hope to see you in my other videos. Bye.